Everyone should know about egg freezing, that you can freeze your eggs just like you can get your boobs done. Everyone knows you get a boob, right? Every 20-year-old knows that you can get a breast implant. And now I think every 20-year-old knows that you can also freeze your eggs.
It's common to hear about egg freezing these days. Celebrities and influencers share their experiences. You may have even talked to your own friends who've done it, or you might be considering it for yourself. Here to educate us and discuss misconceptions surrounding fertility preservation is a reproductive endocrinologist that embraced egg freezing from the beginning. She increased awareness and educated us on national TV and put egg freezing parties on the map before many doctors offered it to their own patients. You may know her as the Egg Whisperer from her wildly popular podcast and social media presence. Dr. Aimee Eyvazzadeh, welcome to Baby or Bust.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Dr. Aimee, who should freeze their eggs?
Anyone with an ovary. Literally. I mean, if you have an ovary and you might want to have kids, I want you to at least learn about it.
I think that a lot of people, either it's just not on their radar until later in life, or they're really intimidated to kind of come talk to a doctor about egg freezing. Like, what would be the process if someone came and said to you, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not really sure?
I always start off with an AMH test, and then I bring them in for an ultrasound. And then we look at their egg count, talk about their goals, their family history, their personal history, and then we make a plan. And that plan might be, I don't need to egg freeze right now. Or it might be, oh yeah, I need to do it, but maybe I'll do 3 cycles of it. And that's one thing I feel like people don't do enough. They sometimes don't freeze enough eggs for themselves. They just freeze once and think that's all they need. And then they come back to us 10 years later and they realize that someone should have told them that they should freeze more.
I know that's hard. What is an AMH test for people that are listening?
Yeah, so it's unfortunately the best test we have, and it's still not that good. It's kind of like doing a sperm count for guys. In a way, it gives us a sense as to how many eggs we might be able to get for you, and it kind of gives us a tool that we can use to project what your future fertility will look like. But again, it's not the best. You can have a really low AMH and just get like 2 eggs from someone and have them be fabulous. And you can have someone with a really high AMH and get a whole bunch of eggs and have none of them be good quality. Starts the conversation with your doctor, and then it can guide you as far as potentially how many cycles of egg freezing you might want to consider. But obviously, you never know what's going to happen with an egg until you fertilize it.
Are there some cases that you wish people had frozen eggs or had thought about it, been counseled in a certain way?
Oh, for sure. I'll just tell you about one of the first patients I ever had, and she's given me permission to share this. Her mom went into menopause when she was 40. Her mom never told her. And she was 40, and she's like, had my mom shared that information with me, I would have frozen my eggs.
You know, the first baby born from a frozen egg was 2006. We think this technology, because it's talked about on People magazine and it's all over TV, that it's just, been around forever, but it's relatively new.
I think it was 2008 was the first time that I took a patient through an egg freezing cycle around then. And it was considered like this big deal. We did one of the first cases at University of Michigan. So it was really special to be involved with that.
I mean, I remember counseling patients at Stanford, back in the early 2000s, really, egg freezing was only offered to cancer patients. I do bring up in the whole realm of IVF, which is really over 40 years old. It's relatively new, and we're still learning a lot.
People have this assumption because of what they see on TV that we're a lot better at things than we really are.
What's the thought process behind egg freezing? I mean, where did that thought come in? Like, why do people have to do that? Why can't they just have a baby at 50?
Yeah, I just say it has to do with our biological clock that we all have. 100% of us run out of healthy eggs. Most of us do it by the age of 40. And there are some people that are lucky enough to still be able to have a baby in their early 40s. Some people can have a baby at 43 or 44, but we're talking about less than 5% of people that can do it. And there are some people that certainly struggle in their 30s, even late 30s. And it just has to do with how many eggs we're born with, our biology and genetics in terms of like what genes we inherited from our parents, and then the environment that we grew up in and what we were exposed to for decades. So I wish we had the control that these magazines make it seem like we can have. For example, Naomi Campbell just had a baby, right? She's over 50, and it's like, how did she do it? And the statement on her I don't remember which magazine she was in, but she said, "It's my own baby." I'm like, "You got that right. It's your own baby." Right? Of course it's your own. And it's no
Yeah.
one's business where that baby came from, but it's misleading for other people who see that as an example. And then they call me and say, I want what she got.
The way I think about egg freezing is donating to your future self. Like you may not use it, but like right now, people who don't egg freeze are honestly using eggs from amazing, wonderful donors, incredible gift. But think about egg freezing as an investment in yourself if you were need to use it in the future.
Exactly. It should be egg freezing, be your own egg donor.
There's so many misconceptions about egg freezing. Like when I talk about it with friends and people that are not in our field, the assumption is, oh yeah, it's just people that kind of forgot to have kids or just really put their career first, and almost like egg freezing is just has it doesn't anymore. I think it's much more empowering now, but in the beginning it really had a little bit of a negative connotation. And do you see that in your practice? Are these like all women that focused on their career?
People are freezing their eggs for a number of reasons, but a lot of it is because they want to have kids and maybe they want a second and they want to freeze their eggs for later for maybe that second or third baby, just in case, or for their gay cousin. Maybe they'll want to donate to them, right? There's so many
Exactly.
different reasons that people are egg freezing now. But I was talking to a doctor in Canada, Dr. Kim Garbedian, and she said something that I was like, oh my God, this is so good. She said that we tend to talk about egg freezing as if it's for a man. It's about a man that we haven't met.
Hmm.
She's like, we have to remove that. It's not about I'm freezing my eggs because I'm waiting for a guy. No, I'm freezing my eggs because I want to have a baby. It has nothing to do with a guy. But to think that something has to do with the decision to egg freezing, she's like, we really have to just take that away from the conversation.
How many eggs should people freeze? Is 10 enough? Is 20 enough? How many does it take?
I mean, I think that's a really hard call. It's just so difficult to tell someone how much is enough for them. But one of the things I've learned through some heartbreaking experiences, like the 46-year-old who comes in after freezing her eggs when she was 36 and then none of them survived, I always tell people to freeze more eggs and maybe consider making embryos before they've completely run out of healthy eggs. I typically say if you're, let's say, under 36, 14 is probably enough for 1 to 2 kids. But if you're over that age, maybe consider at least 20, if not more. I know that's overwhelming because not many people will get that many in one batch. So that might mean doing more than one cycle. But I think at least talking about it and having patients consider it, at least they won't have regret in the future. They'll say, I thought about it and it wasn't for me. I knew what I got myself into and I knew what my chances are with that batch.
In general, more is always better because it really can take a lot of eggs to make a baby. And I talk to people about the older the eggs are, the more of them you need, because we just know that human reproduction is so inefficient. And unless you're sure you're going to use donor sperm, which has really great screening, we don't know what the partner you're going to partner with later if you're partnered with someone who has sperm. Like there could be a serious male factor too, or there could just be lots of other things in the future that we don't know. So it's something that you could, if you're really trying to make an investment in yourself, you should really think about kind of more is better. Do you ever have your patients look at these like egg freezing calculators online?
All the time. I give it to every new patient. I give them the calculators. They can play with the numbers, and I give them an estimate based on their follicle count so they can play around with that. What I find interesting from those conversations is sometimes people put in the numbers. They're like 40 years old, 15 eggs, and it's like 15%. I'm just going to throw that out there. They say to me like, that's so low. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's really high. I'm like, what were you?
Well, there's just a lack of understanding and how inefficient human reproduction is, like how many eggs it takes. And the most people don't realize that even when we're in our 20s and that's like we're most fertile, it can be maybe a 25% chance of getting pregnant with one ovulation and one cycle. Mm-hmm. I think because the fear of getting pregnant so easily when we're young and in health class makes us assume that it's a lot easier. And then I think there are people that do conceive the very first time that they try. I have friends like that. It was really hard when they told me their stories when I had my own infertility, but there are definitely people out that are like that. So happy for them, but they're the ones who talk the loudest. All right, is egg freezing a guarantee?
Oh, absolutely not. And I hate it when people use the word insurance program. It's like if your house burns down, you have insurance, they're going to build your house up. But there's no guarantee that if you run out of eggs, these eggs will work for you. So, this thought that you can have it all, certainly I want everyone to have it all. You can still have it all and have a family, but sometimes your eggs just won't be viable enough.
Is there anyone who should not freeze their eggs?
I worry about people who have very serious psychiatric issues.
Hmm.
Sometimes egg freezing can cause women to suffer greatly from depression, anxiety, just the whole process. So I think hand holding them from the very beginning and really adjusting medications and making sure that they're not taking an excessive amount of hormones, I think is important. I think this idea that you have to take injections to freeze your eggs, I think people have to realize that there are other ways of doing it.
Does the process of egg freezing ever bring out certain emotions or thoughts in your patients that they share with you along the way?
Oh, for sure. I think it brings up a lot of regret about things that have happened in the past. It brings up their relationship with their own mothers. It brings up how much they want to be a mother. And I think I cry more with my egg freezing patients sometimes than my IVF patients.
Hmm.
Because of the experiences I've had, I give them a list of questions to go through that are related to how they're going to feel about the process even before they go through it. And I actually have a psychologist that does a fertility preservation psychological education appointment with them. We talk about in that appointment what it would feel like if, let's say, a partner didn't support you going through this, or a parent didn't support you. Like maybe you had a lot of negativity and you still wanted to do it, like how you deal with that. So I've seen that before. Like I've had someone who wanted to do it. Her parents were really against it. It was really a big conflict. And so having that psychologist meeting was really important for her to feel like so that she can empower herself with, language she can use with her family and still be able to see them and move forward with this process without feeling shamed by them.
There's still so many layers to it. And I feel like it's almost flippant for some people. And sometimes people are going to these like egg freezing clinics where you just like pop in, it's like pop in music or whatever. And they're just like, oh, isn't this so great? And you got these like cheerleaders that are helping you freeze your eggs. And that person might be feeling like, gosh, I've got a mix of emotions. I'm feeling great that I'm doing this, but this is bringing up a lot of stuff. And just to acknowledge that is really, really important.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think that you and I think we both have a very high emotional IQ, so we see the emotions in our patients and we can talk to them about how they're feeling and take the time to do that.
If you come back to use these eggs and they don't work, that does not mean that you can't be a parent. Sometimes that's a conversation with patients. Has that ever happened to
Oh,
you?
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not the end of the road. And my patients know that. And so when things don't work, they're already planning. We pre-plan the plan before the plan doesn't work.
Is there an age that's too old to freeze eggs?
I think you know this about me, that if you have an egg, I'll freeze it. And the oldest egg I've ever frozen was either 50. I think I might be at 52 now. Both times, my 50 and almost 52-year-old egg, neither of them worked. So I have now gone back to warm the egg, try and create an embryo. We weren't successful and we weren't necessarily expecting to be, but these patients just wanted a chance. They still had an egg and I gave them that chance just for their own like process in terms of figuring out what they want next. And so I feel like if a man had a sperm, even if he's 50 and the chances are zero, someone would give that man a chance. So that's just my thing. I feel like there's this huge fertility gender gap and we give men more chances than we do women at the same age. But biologically speaking, we know that the likelihood of a 50-year-old egg turning into a healthy pregnancy is 0.0000000. I can add another million zeros, 1%. But still, I would love to be that person that's like, I did it and it turned into a healthy pregnancy. But in general, probably successfully, if you're over the age of 43, the likelihood of your eggs turning to a healthy pregnancy is probably in the single digit, less than 5%, if not closer to 1 to 2%. But there's still a chance. Sometimes just exploring egg freezing makes you feel like you did it. So I say, just
Mm.
pretend like you did egg freezing, like you went through the process. And what you learned is it probably doesn't make sense for you. And that should be in and of itself really empowering. But for some people, it's just not enough.
Can you describe for me how your patients feel after egg freezing? What those emotions are when it's done and they know how many eggs they have in the freezer? What do you see?
I would say they feel empowered. They feel like winners. They feel like they did something amazing for themselves. There's a huge psychological benefit, I think, from doing it. Even if those eggs do not work, I still think that it helps the patient. It helps them move forward with their lives and make decisions for themselves. It gives them more clarity about their bodies. It helps teach them about their fertility and helps them move on with whatever they need to do next. You know that saying, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, the guy can go on and marry someone else or, get someone else pregnant. And then you're going to be that age and you're not going to have the option because our eggs are not a renewable resource. So whenever you have doubt, don't F your eggs. Just do the other effing, which is freezing.
Oh my God, that's so great. And by F, you mean fertilization, but you know where
Don't
my brain
fertilize
went.
them. Yeah, no, I know. I always say egg freezing is IVF without the effing.
Oh my God, that's great.
Don't get F. Freeze your eggs.
That's great. That's great. I am able to really talk to these couples and kind of say the same thing. I think you're much more of a marriage therapist than I am, but I say, I just sort of say, well, you're at the point now where the success rate is so good and we have so much more experience with egg freezing that you don't have to create embryos and that you do keep options open if you freeze eggs. And it's actually now it's less expensive. Like if this is an out-of-pocket cost for you, it's less expensive because you're kind of doing half of IVF, right? And then later you would pay for fertilization and embryo creation. And how can anybody be 100% sure that they're going to be with a partner? Why were you one of the first doctors to really embrace it? I remember seeing you on the Today Show. And you started egg freezing parties in San Francisco, and you seem to, back in the 2000s, have the vision of where egg freezing would be today. How did you see that?
It was easy. Sex parties. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding, actually. Because all those home shopping parties, right? So all my friends were doing them. It
Mm-hmm.
was the purse party, the jean party, and they were all turning into egg freezing parties for me or fertility awareness seminars. And I
Hmm.
just realized how little people knew about fertility. And so I literally, I just punched into GoDaddy, eggfreezingparty.com, because I'm like, I need to do something to educate people. Like, no one knows about egg freezing. And it's really frustrating for me that like really educated people just still don't know enough.
Mm-hmm.
The URL was available. I bought it. And then all of a sudden, Facebook and Apple came out and said that they were covering it for their employees. My mom called me and she's like, Aimee, did you hear that now if you have a Facebook account, you can get egg freezing
Oh,
covered for
that's so
you?
cute.
I was like, no, that's
Oh,
not what that
Mom.
meant. Yeah. And then the rest is history. Everyone should know about egg freezing, that you can freeze your eggs just like you can get your boobs done. Everyone knows you can get a boob, right? Every 20-year-old knows that you can get a breast implant. And now I think every 20-year-old knows that you can also freeze your eggs, finally.
So for those patients that don't work at Facebook or Google or Microsoft and have this incredible coverage, how do people think through the cost of egg freezing and weighing its benefits and costs?
If someone wants to get something done, they can finance it just like plastic surgery. I mean, there are financing companies out there. However, the difference is if you go get your boobs done, you're going to leave the plastic surgeon's office with boobs. For us, if you get your eggs frozen, you're going to have a chance to use them in the future, but it may not work out. So I do
Yeah.
get that it's different, but it's similar. If it's important enough to someone, they'll find a way to do it, hopefully. And there are companies that you can pay off just a little bit over a longer period of time. And so it is doable for a lot of people. Other thing that you can do is talk to HR at your company and see if they'll cover it. Sometimes things will change at your company if you're the one to start advocating for yourself and other employees. And there are also programs like the one I have, which is Freeze and Share. So that is a program for young women who qualify, who really want to donate their eggs as well. And in exchange for donating their eggs, they'll have half frozen for themselves too. And there are also clinics in this country that offer egg freezing at a much lower price than, for example, in the Bay Area. And I refer my patients to those clinics should they want to go there.
It's important to not only ask your HR and advocate for that, but also with the fertility clinic, a lot of fertility clinics will kind of lower costs if you have to do a second cycle. Some clinics that have egg donation programs, sometimes, like you said, will sometimes combine donating your eggs and freezing some for yourself. You are so right that people can get creative. I remember one of my patients actually, for her 30th birthday, had an egg freezing party, but a little bit different than yours. She said, instead of giving me a birthday present or buying me shots, donate to my egg freezing goal. And she got really far in her goal. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. What other questions do people ask you, or things that you wish people knew?
You wrote about it in a Forbes article, I think I saw recently, about the importance of taking CoQ10. So any young person or even regardless of your age, I see every patient now is young given my age now. I always say take CoQ10 until you're done having kids. Okay. And I can make a cock joke. Go get some cock. I'm just kidding. You know what I'm talking. So I had a patient that CoQ10 is spelled COQ, and there's a language barrier, and she thought it was pronounced cock. So she went to the pharmacy and asked for cock, and she said, "Doctor, my doctor told me I need some cock. Where do I find cock?" Anyways, this is for my stand-up routine.
Oh God, no, that's so good.
Get yourself some cock, ladies. No, get yourself some CoQ10 and take it until you're done having kids, because I think long-term exposure to it could potentially preserve your eggs and may make them better when you're older. It's hard to say for sure. We just need more research on it. But I predict that we might find that to be true.
Just in general, Aimee, what's the egg freezing process like? Does it take months and months, or?
So the process is basically 2 weeks of your life, 5 visits start to finish. 4 of them are usually pelvic ultrasounds. Your 5th one is the egg retrieval, which is a pelvic ultrasound while you're asleep. During that time frame, you're doing a shot. It's like plucking an eyebrow. That's how much it hurts. Tiny little needle, skin of your tummy. Those bruises you see online, on social media accounts, they're just squeezing their skin too hard. Don't do that.
How does someone prepare for it? Is it something that you can just kind of add on to your already hectic social life and busy job?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it anytime you want, but I think you really need to take the time to make sure that you're doing it at a time where you're low stress, you have flexibility in your schedule. And it's not just flexibility during that 2-week time, it's also recovery time too. Don't do it and then get on the plane the next day and go to Europe.
Exactly. Oh gosh, I had someone who I don't think I counseled very well. And I remember, she was a physician. And she went on this incredible hiking trip literally a couple days after her retrieval. She'd been planning it for years. And then she was talking about wait, I can't be around bears when I have my period. And anyway, it was just it was a whole thing. I loved her. And she had a great time. She did great. She had a great time. Yeah. But I was like, I need to counsel patients better about what to expect, right? Cannot assume that physicians know everything. And I should know that because I was the worst patient. Can people work out? I have patients that are actually really stressed about stopping their fitness because it relieves their stress, or they like the way, they feel when they're working out. And sometimes people don't freeze their eggs because they've been told that they have to completely stop working out. What do you say?
Use your common sense. If you're feeling good, work out. If you're not, don't. It's as simple as that. You're not going to torse your ovary. I've had patients working out for the last 15 years. I haven't had a single ovarian torsion. I'm not worried about that. Yeah. I think the easiest thing to tell someone is just no. Can I work out? No. So that you don't have a conversation with them. But the reality is you can. You can lift weights. You can work out. Yep. Just listen to your body. If you're feeling like crud, don't work out. It's as simple as that.
What happens when you want to use your eggs? How do you tell people what happens when they come back?
You go to my article, eggthawingparty.com, literally. I feel like I need to start egg thawing parties. I have a whole list of things to do. Get your tushy checked, look at genetic stuff, test the heck out of sperm before you thaw your precious eggs. Make sure you have those checks and balances in place in the lab. So if the sperm sucks that day, they do not thaw your eggs. And these are because of experiences I've had and heard from patients, of course, not with me as their doctor. But I hear stories where the sperm was terrible and they still thawed the eggs, and they never told the patient until after the fact when the embryos were terrible also. So I just have that checklist in place so people kind of know what they should be thinking about and do first, so they don't have regrets, basically.
There's multiple cool things about egg freezing, and a couple of them are actually discovering things that people didn't know. Sometimes we're the first time that someone's ever done a pelvic ultrasound, so we'll find fibroids, which are just benign kind of tumors, just growths on the uterus, and they haven't caused symptoms yet. Or people will say, yeah, I've always had really heavy periods and now I know why, so they can kind of get it addressed. And the other really cool thing is you get to learn so much about your cycle. Like, how many people actually get to see their ovaries in action and learn about the menstrual cycle and like how eggs work? So I love doing ultrasounds on my patients and kind of teaching at the same time. So it's like a benefit of egg freezing that you probably won't read about, but I think it's pretty amazing.
It's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to live through it, because that experience just teaches you so much.
Dr. Aimee, thank you so much for being here today. And I just appreciate your vision. You know, I saw it from the beginning. I saw it at one of your first egg freezing parties in Seattle. And I think your dedication to education and making sure that people know what technology is available to them, I just appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, Dr. Aimee, where can we find you?
Oh, I'm so easy to find. Just put in DRAIMEE. Drainey is my rap name, and you'll find me.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did with Dr. Aimee Eyvazzadeh. She is my dear friend and colleague for a long time, and I've always appreciated her dedication to education. Egg freezing is not just for people that forgot to have a baby. It is an empowering choice, and people need to know about it. Dr. Aimee said something really powerful, that every 20-year-old knows they can get breast augmentation, but not every 20-year-old knows how eggs age and the power of egg freezing to keep your options open in the future. I am taking away so much learning from this conversation, and I hope you do too. I'm Dr. Lora Shahine, and this is Baby or Bust. If you like this episode, let us know. Give us a 5-star review and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Baby or Bust is produced by Mark Ramsey, Jamie Solis, and Greg Moga. Executive produced by Paul Anderson for Workhouse Media. Baby or Bust is a Mark Ramsey media production.